There are exactly hours left before the sky does something it has not done in this era of human history. Most people will feel something shift today and tomorrow, and they will call it stress. They will call it a difficult week. They will reach for their phone, or their bottle, or their endless scroll, and they will numb the signal before they ever hear the message. But you are not most people. You felt something, in your chest, behind your eyes, in the strange tightness at the base of your throat that appeared sometime in the last several days, without a name, without an obvious cause, without any invitation you consciously extended. That sensation is not anxiety. That sensation is not exhaustion, though you may be exhausted. That sensation is your body receiving a transmission it already knows how to read, from a sky that has been building toward this moment for months, and in certain respects, for years. On Friday, May 1st, 2026, at 1:23 in the afternoon, Eastern Time, the moon reaches full illumination at 11 degrees and 21 minutes of Scorpio. And when it does, it will not arrive quietly. It will not arrive as a gentle invitation. It will arrive the way truth always arrives, when it has been patient long enough, not gently, not with warning, with surgical certainty. Before this window closes, you will understand three things. First, what this full moon actually is, why this specific lunation arrives at a moment when the sky is stacked with some of the rarest and most concentrated planetary pressure of the decade, and why what is happening overhead right now will not repeat in this particular form. Second, which four signs are sitting directly beneath the most concentrated weight of this sky, what this moment is demanding from each of them personally, and why even the signs not named in that list cannot consider themselves bystanders. Third, the specific practice, the precise ritual, built from what the sky is actually offering, transforms this disruption from something that happens to you into something that happens for you. Stay with this. Every second of it, because the window this lunation opens will not remain open, and what you do not face in the light of this moon, you will carry into the next chapter of your life unexamined, unprocessed, and heavier than it needs to be. This is not a forecast, this is a briefing, and it begins now. To understand what is happening on May 1st, you have to understand what Scorpio is. Not the simplified version, not the vague cultural shorthand that reduces an entire archetype to jealousy and obsession. The actual thing. Scorpio is the part of the zodiac that governs what lives beneath the surface of everything. It rules shared resources and the psychological entanglements that money and intimacy create between people. It rules the reproductive system, the excretory system, the biological machinery of transformation and release. It rules death not as a finality, but as a mechanism. The natural process by which what has outlived its purpose is broken down so that its essential matter can become something new. Scorpio is the sign of composting, of decomposition as creation, of the moment the chrysalis liquefies completely, not yet butterfly, no longer caterpillar, suspended in a state of total dissolution before the reorganization begins. It is not a comfortable sign. It was never meant to be. Comfort is Taurus. Scorpio is what Taurus must eventually surrender to. The way spring surrenders to winter, the way the living body surrenders to the soil, not as defeat, as completion, and a full moon in Scorpio illuminates all of that. Every relationship where the power dynamics have never been spoken aloud. Every financial arrangement that carries emotional weight beneath its surface. Every truth you have been holding in your body because your mind decided the timing was wrong, or the person was not safe, or the cost of honesty felt higher than the cost of silence. Every version of yourself you have been quietly outgrowing for months, while the public version of you holds its shape and smiles. The full moon in Scorpio takes those things, one by one, and it brings them into the light. Not because it is cruel, because light is what they require. Because the thing living in the dark of your interior life is not dangerous because it is dark. It is dangerous only because it is unseen, and the sky right now in this configuration is refusing to allow that any longer. This particular full moon is arriving at a moment unlike any other in the immediate decade around it. Pluto, the ruling planet of Scorpio, the planet of death and rebirth, power and transformation, the The slowest personal reckoning in the entire solar system is currently at 5 degrees of Aquarius, and it is slowing. On May 6th, just 5 days after this full moon, Pluto will retrograde. It will grind to a complete halt and reverse direction. Right now, in the days surrounding May 1st, Pluto is at its most stationary, at its most concentrated, at its most penetrating. When a planet stations, its energy does not scatter forward through the zodiac. It stops, it focuses, it turns inward like a searchlight held on a single point. And Pluto stationing in Aquarius, within 5 days of a full moon in Scorpio, means that the ruler of this lunation, the planet that governs everything Scorpio stands for, is not moving. It is standing completely still in the sky, pouring every ounce of its transformational force into the atmosphere. At the exact moment the moon reaches its fullest illumination. This is not a gentle Scorpio full moon. This is a Scorpio full moon with Pluto frozen overhead, breathing down the back of its neck. To understand the weight of this, consider what Pluto in Aquarius represents in the larger sweep of history. Pluto entered Aquarius permanently in late 2024 and will remain there until approximately 2043. This is a 20-year chapter of collective transformation, centered on the technologies we build, the information systems we inhabit, the networks of power that connect individuals to institutions, and the question of who controls the future. The last time Pluto transited Aquarius was between 1778 and 1798, the era of the American and French revolutions, the collapse of monarchies, and the rewriting of what civilization believed it owed to the individual. That is the scale of transformation Pluto in Aquarius carries, and right now, at the moment of this full moon, Pluto is frozen at the threshold of its retrograde in that sign, holding still, while the moon in Scorpio pulls every hidden truth to the surface. The last time a Scorpio full moon occurred near this degree of the sign was in November of 2007. But in 2007, Pluto was still in Sagittarius, nearing the end of its journey through that sign, and not yet installed in Capricorn. The planetary architecture surrounding that lunation was entirely different. There was no stationing Pluto within 5 days. There was no Mars in Aries, squaring Jupiter in Cancer, amplifying every emotional reaction to the size of a stadium. There was no Mercury conjunct Chiron in Aries, pressing wounded truths toward the surface with the urgency of a confession that has been held too long. The geometry was different, the stakes were different. What is happening above you right now is singular. And the pressure you feel in your chest, the tightness behind your eyes, the sleep that will not stay deep, those are not coincidences. That is your nervous system registering an atmosphere it has never navigated before, because it has never existed in this form before. Now you need to understand what else is in the sky, because the full moon does not stand alone. It never does, but on May 1st, 2026, it is surrounded on every side by planets doing significant, concentrated work. Begin with Mars. The traditional ruler of Scorpio, before Pluto was discovered, was Mars. Mars governs action, desire, aggression, the body's willingness to move toward what it wants and away from what threatens it. On May 1st, Mars is in Aries, its home sign, where its energy is unfiltered, direct, and operating at full power. Mars in Aries does not negotiate. It does not wait for consensus. It acts from instinct. And at this full moon, Mars in Aries is forming a square to Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter in Cancer is the planet of expansion, operating through the sign of emotional security, home, family, belonging, and the primal need to feel safe and held. Jupiter magnifies whatever it touches. A square between Mars in Aries and Jupiter in Cancer means that whatever emotions have been building beneath the surface of your intimate relationships, your home life, your sense of safety and belonging, are now being amplified to the point where they can no longer be contained. The square is a friction aspect. It does not harmonize. It forces a confrontation between two energies that both demand expression and cannot coexist at their current sizes without something giving way. In plain terms, the emotional reactions you experience in the days around this full moon may feel disproportionately large. They are not disproportionate to what has been suppressed. They are simply arriving at their actual, uncalibrated size for the first time in a while. The Mars-Jupiter square at a Scorpio full moon is the aspect of the emotional flood that you kept managing for months, finally cresting the dam. Let it crest. The dam was never the point. What it was protecting was. Then there is Mercury conjunct Chiron in Aries. Mercury governs communication, the mind, the voice, the words you choose, and the ones you swallow. Chiron is the wound that teaches, the place in the chart where early damage created both your deepest sensitivity and your most potent capacity for guidance. When Mercury and Chiron sit together in the sky, words have the power to heal or to reopen. Old communication wounds surface. Things you were told that you were never supposed to believe, but believed anyway. Things you needed to say that were silenced before they could be spoken. In Aries, this conjunction carries urgency. Aries does not wait for the perfect moment. Aries does not rehearse. Aries speaks from the center of the impulse. And at this full moon, the sky is pressing you toward a truth that needs to be spoken in its raw form, rather than its polished, carefully managed form. Mercury conjunct Chiron in Aries at a Scorpio full moon is the moment the rehearsed speech dissolves, and what comes out instead is the actual thing, the unedited version, the one that has been living in your body long before it found language. And then there is Uranus, sitting at 29 degrees of Taurus, in what astrologers call an anaretic degree, the final degree of a sign, the degree of culmination and urgency. Uranus at 29 Taurus is at the end of its 7-year journey through the sign of material security, physical stability, land, money, and the body. It is days from completing an entire cycle. And it sits in opposition to this full moon. The 29th degree of any sign carries a quality of completion that borders on desperation, of the thing that has not yet been finished, forcing its way toward resolution. Uranus at 29 Taurus, opposing a Scorpio full moon, is the shock of a revelation that has been waiting since 2018, when Uranus first entered Taurus, to finally arrive at the surface. Something about your material world, your financial reality, your sense of physical security, has been in a slow process of disruption for nearly 8 years. Most of that disruption has been gradual enough to manage, to rationalize, to accommodate, but Uranus at the final degree of Taurus, in opposition to the full moon that rules what lies beneath the surface, is the moment of final reckoning with that disruption. It arrives now. It arrives through Scorpio's unflinching light. And it asks you what you have been pretending is still stable when you already know it has changed. Now the signs, if your sun, moon, or rising falls in any of these 4 signs, read this section as a personal briefing. If you fall outside these 4 signs, do not skip this section, because the axis of every chart is connected, and what moves through one quadrant of the sky moves through all of them. For Scorpio, the full moon falls directly on you, in you, through you. This is not a lunation that affects the world around a Scorpio and leaves you watching from a comfortable distance. This is the sky positioning a searchlight directly at the territory of your life that has been operating in private. The 6 months you have lived since the new moon in Scorpio in November of 2025 have been a building cycle, a planting, a set of seeds you dropped into dark soil, some intentionally and some by circumstance. And those seeds have been growing in the dark ever since. This full moon is the harvest of that cycle. What you quietly began in November, what you committed to in the chambers of your interior where no one else could see, is reaching its moment of culmination now. Some of what culminates will feel like a victory, a truth finally acknowledged, a weight finally set down, A relationship that has evolved into something more honest, because you were willing to stop protecting both people from what was true. But some of what culminates will feel like the arrival of something you have been bracing for, without consciously admitting you were bracing for it. A confrontation you knew was coming, even as you were still pretending it was not. A moment of clarity so sharp, it temporarily feels like a wound, before it reveals itself as a doorway. This is the nature of Scorpio. The clarity is not separate from the pain. It arrives through it. And for Scorpio, the specific invitation of this full moon is to stop managing how much of yourself you allow others to see. You are extraordinarily skilled at calibrating your transparency. You know, almost instinctively, exactly how much to show and exactly what to keep in reserve. It is one of your most sophisticated survival strategies, developed through experience, that taught you what happens when you trust the wrong person with the whole truth. But this full moon, with Pluto frozen overhead and the 11th degree of your own sign illuminated, is asking whether that strategy has outlived its usefulness in at least one relationship, at least one dimension of your life, at least one conversation you keep not quite having, not because the other person is not ready, but because some part of you is still deciding whether you are. The question this full moon poses for Scorpio is not whether you can survive continued concealment. You can. You always have. The question is what becomes possible if you stop. What enters the space where the withheld truth used to live. That is what the sky is holding open for you right now. And the window is exactly as wide as this lunation allows. For Taurus, the full moon opposes you from across the zodiac, and Uranus sits at the final degree of your sign, in a last, urgent opposition, before it departs forever. The Taurus experience of this full moon is the experience of the ground, finishing its shift beneath your feet. You are the fixed earth sign. You are built for stability, for sensory grounding, for the patient accumulation of security over time. Your body knows how to read physical reality. Your instincts are calibrated for what can be touched, tasted, held, and relied upon. But Uranus has been in your sign since 2018, and it has been quietly dismantling and rebuilding your relationship with everything Taurus holds sacred: money, the body, land, possessions, the material scaffolding of a life. At 29 degrees, the final degree, Uranus is completing its work in Taurus. It is writing its last sentence in the chapter of your material life before it turns the page and moves on. And it is doing that through the opposition to this full moon, which means the completion is not arriving as a peaceful conclusion. It is arriving as a revelation, something you have been carrying about your financial reality, your sense of physical safety, or the body itself, is being illuminated in scorpionic light. You cannot look away. You cannot defer it to next week. The time is now, and the sky will not be argued with. The invitation for Taurus in this window is to resist the urge to immediately rebuild. When the revelation arrives, when the Uranian disruption completes itself through the Scorpio full moon, the Taurus impulse will stabilize as quickly as possible, to reassemble, to construct something solid from the rubble. But before you build, the sky is asking you to stand still in what is true right now, to allow the material reality of your life, the actual reality rather than the managed version, to be fully seen before you start laying new bricks on top of it. What you build after this window, if you let the window do its work, will be built on a foundation that cannot crack in the same places again. For Cancer, Mars is squaring Jupiter in your sign from Aries, and the amplification this creates is landing directly in your emotional body. Cancer governs the home, the family, the primal sense of safety and belonging, the emotional roots of the self. Jupiter in Cancer has been expanding those themes all year, making the emotional world of Cancer larger, more present, and harder to contain. And now Mars in Aries is forming a friction square to that expanded emotional field. Something in your home or family life, or in the story you tell yourself about where you belong and who you belong with, has reached a size that cannot be held quietly any longer. The Scorpio full moon is not directly on Cancer, but it forms a trine, a flowing and supportive angle, which means that while the Mars-Jupiter square is creating pressure, the moon itself is offering Cancer a gift, the emotional depth to process what the pressure is revealing without being destroyed by it. Cancer has the capacity, more than almost any other sign, to hold grief and love in the same hand simultaneously. This full moon is asking you to use that capacity. Not to resolve the tension between what you want and what is true, but to sit with both of them without forcing a resolution that the situation is not yet ready to provide. The trine from Scorpio to Cancer is water speaking to water. It is depth, recognizing depth. Let the full moon do what trines do. Let it carry what you cannot carry alone to a shore where it can be set down. For Aquarius, Pluto is in your sign, and it is slowing, almost stopped, preparing to station retrograde in 5 days. The Aquarius experience of this full moon is the experience of a planet the size of a world grinding to a halt inside your chart. Pluto in Aquarius, which entered your sign permanently in late 2024, is conducting a 20-year excavation of everything Aquarius has built its identity around, its ideals, its collectives, its belief systems, its relationship to innovation and to the future. And right now, on May 1st, Pluto is at its most concentrated and most inward turning, because it is preparing to reverse direction. What this means for Aquarius is that the psychological interior is under maximum pressure. The things you have been questioning about your place in your community, your network, your chosen collectives, about whether the groups you belong to still reflect who you actually are. Those questions are not abstract at this full moon. They are arriving as a felt experience, as somatic pressure, as the thing you cannot think your way around, because it is not living in the mind anymore. It has descended into the body, into the chest, into the space behind the sternum, where abstract convictions become physical reality. Aquarius is one of the most intellectually gifted signs in the zodiac. You can understand a system from the outside with extraordinary precision. But Pluto stationing in your sign at the moment of a Scorpio full moon is not offering you the outside view. It is pulling you inside the thing you have been analyzing. And that transition from analyst to participant, from theorist to experiencer, is the most uncomfortable thing Pluto can do to an Aquarian mind. You cannot footnote a grief. You cannot diagram a loss into something smaller than it is. What Pluto stationing in your sign at this full moon is asking Aquarius to do is to let the knowledge drop from the mind into the body, to stop processing and start feeling, even if only for a few days, even if only in the privacy of a room with the door closed and no audience to perform understanding for. The window does not stay open. This is the section where most people look away, where the content turns toward the avoid list, and the instinct is to scroll past, because avoidance instructions feel like a reminder of things we already suspect, and we do not particularly want the reminder formalized into language. But stay here, because in the window of a Scorpio full moon, with Pluto stationing 5 days later, and Mars squaring Jupiter overhead, the consequences of acting from unprocessed emotion are not theoretical. They are specific. And what you do these days carries extra weight because the emotional field around you is carrying extra charge. Do not make irreversible financial decisions involving shared resources, not loans, not joint accounts, not large transfers, not signing anything that entangles your material reality with another person's in a way that cannot easily be undone. The Scorpio full moon, opposite Uranus at 29, Taurus specifically activates the field around money, shared assets, and financial security. Any decision made in that field right now is being made under the influence of a revelation that has not yet finished revealing itself. The full picture is not visible yet. What looks urgent is not urgent. What looks like an opportunity is being seen through a lens that the next 72 hours will significantly alter. Wait before you act. The decision will still be available. The clarity will be worth the wait. Do not send emotionally charged messages. Do not confront the person, not yet, not before you have sat with the insight for at least 48 hours and allowed it to settle from the electrical charge of revelation into the steadier temperature of actual conviction. The truth that is surfacing right now is real, but truth delivered at maximum emotional charge through the amplification of a Mars-Jupiter square at a Scorpio full moon rarely lands the way it deserves. It gets tangled in the charge. It becomes about the confrontation rather than the content. The person on the other end of the message hears the emotion before they hear the truth. And the truth deserves to be heard. Let it ripen in you first. Let it find its cleaner, cooler form before you release it into someone else's atmosphere. Do not perform elective surgery or any invasive medical procedure if you have the option to schedule it differently. This is not superstition. Scorpio governs the reproductive system, the excretory system, the lower pelvis, and the organs of transformation and elimination. During a full moon in Scorpio, those body zones are heightened in sensitivity. The body is more reactive, more permeable, more responsive to intervention than it is at other phases. The full moon has long been associated with increased physiological sensitivity in surgical settings, documented across centuries by practitioners who kept careful records before anyone had formal language for the observation. If your procedure can move by a week, let it move. Do not begin a new relationship or a new sexual entanglement under the compulsive pull of this sky. Mars in Aries, squaring Jupiter in Cancer at a Scorpio full moon, creates a specific quality of intensity that feels like recognition, like the new person in front of you is someone you have always known, like the pull you feel is destiny rather than timing. It may be, but it may also be the amplified emotional field of this lunation operating through your nervous system, creating the experience of depth and significance that belongs to the moment rather than to the person. What you encounter in the Scorpio full moon is often a mirror rather than a door. Sit with what you see before you walk through anything, and do not reach for the numbing behaviors, the alcohol, the excessive scrolling, the frantic overworking that keeps you too occupied to feel what is rising. Every numbing strategy in this window costs more than it gives, because what you are numbing is not pain without purpose. It is information. It is the signal your body has been waiting for the exact right atmospheric conditions to transmit. Those conditions exist right now and will not exist again in this precise form. To numb the signal is to pay the price of the disruption without receiving the gift of the message. Let the signal arrive. Let it complete itself. It knows where it is going, even when you do not. Now the ritual. Because the sky does not only disrupt, it also opens. And this full moon, for all its intensity, for all the weight it carries, and the truths it insists on bringing to light, is also a genuine portal, a real opportunity, an opening in the wall between what you have been carrying and what you are capable of setting down. That opening exists right now. It will not exist in exactly this form again. On the night of May 1st, gather the following: a black or white candle, a bowl of water, a pen and 2 pieces of paper. Place them somewhere private, somewhere you will not be interrupted and do not feel observed. Somewhere that belongs entirely to you for this hour. Light the candle. Allow yourself to sit in front of its light for 1 full minute before you write a single word. Not thinking, not planning, just breathing. Let the atmosphere of the moment settle around you the way water settles after a stone has moved through it. Let the stillness arrive before you ask it to do any work. Then take the first piece of paper and write 3 things. Write them in complete sentences, not fragments or lists. First, write a truth you have been withholding from yourself. Not a small truth, not a comfortable truth, dressed carefully to look like a difficult one. The real thing, the one you have been calling by a different name for months or years because its actual name felt too large to speak. Write it in its actual name. Second, write a pattern in your relationships that you are ready to release. not the pattern of the other person. Your pattern, the one that appears across multiple relationships in different forms but carries the same essential shape. The one that you are beginning to recognize as yours, to untangle rather than theirs to correct. Write it without softening it. Third, write a fear you consent to face. Not a fear you have already moved through, a live one. Something that still carries enough charge that your pen moves more slowly when you approach it. Something that has been quietly organizing your choices without your full conscious permission. When you have written all three, read them aloud. This is not optional. The voice is the bridge between the interior and the exterior. What lives only in the mind has a different quality than what is spoken into physical air. When you read it aloud, you hear it as another person hears it. You meet it as an external reality rather than an internal condition. Read each sentence slowly and allow yourself to fully land in what you have said. Do not rush past the weight of it. The weight is the point. Then take the second piece of paper and write a single sentence. It must begin with the words, "I now choose." Complete it with something true, something that lives on the other side of what you wrote on the first paper. Not what you wish were true, what, in the deepest and most honest part of you, you are actually choosing, perhaps for the first time, without the armor of ambiguity around it. When both papers are complete, fold the first one carefully and burn it in the candle flame. If burning is not possible in your space, tear it completely into pieces and release the pieces into running water, a river, a stream, a faucet, the bowl of water you gathered at the beginning. Either way, the intention is the same. You are not destroying the truth. You are releasing your identity as someone who must carry it alone in the dark. You are completing its time as a secret and beginning its life as something you have faced. Keep the second paper somewhere visible for the next 30 days. On your mirror, on the wall above your desk, somewhere your eyes land before the first input of the day reaches you. Let it be the sentence that orients your morning before the world adds its noise. Then, sit with the candle for 10 uninterrupted minutes in complete silence. No guidance audio, no music, no voice from a screen. Only the candle, your breath, and whatever arises in the space between them. Do not manage what arises. Do not analyze it or draft it into a plan. Let it arrive, and let it move through you, and let it complete its own arc without your intervention. What surfaces in these 10 minutes is not a problem to be solved. It is information that has been waiting for exactly this quality of quiet. Close by, drinking a glass of water slowly and with full attention. Allow the temperature of it to register in your throat and chest. Feel the weight of it in your body. This is grounding. This is the body reclaiming its own gravity after the emotional altitude of what you have just done. Water is Scorpio's element. It takes the shape of whatever contains it, and it has no memory of the shape it held before. That is the invitation the sky is extending tonight. The ritual is complete. Now, the call. You came to this content for a reason. Your instincts navigated you here through whatever sequence of choices and algorithms, and late-night searching brought you to this moment. And your instincts are correct. This is not background content. This is not ambient cosmic noise to fall asleep to. What is happening in the sky around May 1st, 2026 is a genuine inflection point in the larger narrative of your life. The kind of moment that, looked back upon from a distance of months or years, will appear as a clear before and after, a threshold you either walked through consciously or drifted past in a numbing haze and arrived on the other side of without the transformation the crossing was designed to give you. Inflection points do not announce themselves with fanfare. They arrive in the tightness behind the eyes, and the pressure in the chest, and the sleep that will not stay deep, and the feeling you have been carrying for weeks or months that something is about to change, and you cannot quite make yourself look directly at what it is. You have looked at it in this video. That is not a small thing. That is the first act of a person who is no longer simply surviving a transformation, but consciously participating in one. There is a difference between those two experiences that cannot be measured in outcomes alone. It lives in the quality of who you become on the other side. If you know someone who needs to hear this, who has been unsettled and could not name the reason, who felt the shift in the sky, but did not have the language to locate it, share this with them. The full moon does not only illuminate individuals in isolation, it illuminates entire communities of people who needed the same permission at the same moment to stop pretending they did not already know what they know. That community is real. You are already inside it. Leave a comment with a single word, one word that describes what surfaced for you in this video. Not a paragraph, not an explanation, not a theory, just the word. Because sometimes the most honest thing is also the smallest thing. And the smallest true thing, spoken aloud at the peak of a Scorpio full moon, with Pluto frozen overhead, and the 29th degree of Taurus, completing its long work in the sky, is the most powerful thing you can do with the time the window gives you. The window closes. The moon moves on. What you do with the light it left behind is yours. Entirely, completely, irreversibly yours.